One of the great things about sports, aside from the entertainment that it provides, the excitement, the passion of seeing your team win, but it also is about making predictions and seeing if your predictions come true so you can say to all those who doubted you that you knew all along. Even though at the end of the day, getting a prediction in sports right means nothing aside from just bragging rights, and let's be real, most of the time our predictions end up being incorrect. Sometimes they are way off, but as fans it doesn't really matter because we don't get paid to cover the sport. We don't do this for a living and aren't living and breathing sports all day every day. We are not experts when it comes to stuff like this. I personally work in finance and basketball is just a hobby, a passion, a creative outlet for me. I love talking about it, but I'm never going to be an expert on the game. I'm never going to be as knowledgeable as someone who covers the sport for a living, or at least you would think anyway, because while a lot of people put stock and credibility into some of the major media outlets and what they say and predict about the NBA, sometimes we have to take a step back and say, do they even know what they're talking about? Are they even serious when it comes to some of the analysis, quote unquote, that they publish? Are they taking their job seriously, or are they just throwing stuff out there for shock value to drive clicks and engagement? And I know I'm only giving them what they want by making this video, but with the season right around the corner, I'm starting to put together my conference standing projections. I couldn't help but react to just how bad ESPN's conference standing projections are. And I'm here to talk about it. Of course, if you're new to the channel and you like this type of content, then be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a video. And in return, I'll be providing more NBA content like this. Now, of course, every media outlet, small or big, every season they put out their NBA season projections. How many wins a given team is projected to get and where they're going to finish in their respective conference. And there are always going to be some head scratchers when you look at some of these projections. But I personally felt like ESPN was especially bad. Worse than some of their awful predictions of the past. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, well, a few days ago, ESPN put out their projected win totals for their top 10 teams in each conference, which they do every year. And I want to start with the Eastern Conference because as bad as I thought this one was, just wait until you see the West projections. But for the East, they have the Celtics at the top with an estimated 54.3 wins, then the Cavs, the Bucks, the Sixers, Knicks, Hawks, Heat, Raptors, Nets, and finally the Pacers for the top 10 teams in the East. The Bulls, Wizards, Hornets, Magic, and Pistons not making the cut to get into the play-in. Of course, you know I have something to say about the Bulls not being in the top 10, but I'll save that for now and start at the top of their Eastern Conference projections. Now, I know they use a particular formula to come up with these win totals. It's why you don't see even numbers here. They're based on a number of metrics, including strength of schedule, matchups, obviously the level of talent on a roster based on a player's efficiency on both ends of the floor. And while I'm actually not opposed to who they have listed in the top three with the Celtics, Cavs, and Bucks, what gets me is just how much better they think Boston is going to be than the rest of the conference. Going from a projected win total of 54 to 48 for the number 2 seed. Like I said, I don't doubt Boston will finish with the number 1 seed in the East. From top to bottom, I think they have the most talent in the conference. I do think losing Smart is going to be a big loss for them, but then they really made up for it by snagging Drew Holiday. But given the level of parity in the NBA, I don't see how you can put that large of a gap between them and the rest of the conference. The Bucks, yeah, I can see them falling to third, potentially winning less than 50 games because I don't think that they're going to take the regular season as seriously, or at least go as hard and save everything for the playoffs given Damian Lillard's age. The fact that Giannis is also going to be laser focused on a championship now that he has Dame. So let's be real, the Bucks are going to be great. They're going to be one of the top title contenders in the league just purely because of their superstar talent that they have, but they do have holes in their roster. And they're not going to be very deep off the bench, which makes it hard to produce sustained, consistent winning over an 82-game regular season. Now, the Sixers, they have fourth. I mean, sure, anybody's guess is as good as theirs. We have no idea what's going to happen with James Harden. We don't know if Embiid is going to say enough is enough and request to trade himself at some point. We don't know if Tyrese Maxey is going to continue in making that leap year after year. The Knicks, fifth, well, I understand it, and it's easy to put them there because they finished fifth last season with 47 wins. I still don't think the Knicks are going to be able to replicate the kind of success that we saw last season. If you got my video on 5 teams that I think are going to disappoint this year, then you know why. But essentially, I think Tibbs and his coaching style will eventually run its course, and I think Randall is going to be the ultimate detriment to this team's success. But for this projection, I get it because it's easy. 6 through 10 is where things start to go wrong for me. I mean, the Hawks at 6, I don't see how you can take a team that was 500 last season, didn't make any meaningful improvements to their roster, and say that they're going to be better. For the Heat, yeah, I mean, we can see that one because they actually had an underwhelming offseason, missing out on Dame and Drew Holiday, But never count out the Heat and their culture and their commitment to winning. For the Raptors, though, this one does not make sense to me at all. You're talking about a team that underperformed, disappointed, finished 500, lost their starting point guard, and essentially running it back with the same crew without Van Fleet, a team that isn't a well-balanced, well-put-together roster that was dysfunctional a lot last season, and you put in a new first-time head coach, and somehow you think they're going to be better than last year? And better than teams like the Pacers, the Bulls, or even the Magic? The Raptors very well could blow up their roster by the trade deadline, and yet ESPN thinks they're going to be better than they were last year. For the Nets, I don't agree with it because I actually think the Nets will be one of the teams that misses the play-in just given their level of inexperience and not enough depth on their roster and talent on the roster, but I do like what they're doing for the future. And for the Pacers, honestly, I would probably put them higher. Not a lot higher, but certainly more than 38 wins when you look at the overall talent they have. A great coach. They were a team that was making quite a bit of noise last season before they started shutting things down to tank for Wembayama at the end of the year. And then, again, I know I'm biased, but even trying to be non-biased as much as I possibly can, I don't know how you can leave the Bulls out of the top 10. Having them win less than 38 games, a team that won 40 games last season, lost 17 of them by 5 points or less, a team that got better on paper over the offseason and bringing in players that address their weaknesses with outside shooting, and then also just having Zach LaVine finally 100% healthy for the whole season, hopefully anyway. Nah, that's ridiculous. The Bulls aren't going to be a top team in the East, but at a minimum, they will make the play-in, and in my opinion, they'll make the playoffs. But as bad as the East predictions are, nothing compares to what they put out for the Western Conference. It's almost as if they got all the Western Conference teams, threw them into a hat and picked them out one by one and assigned them a ranking from where they were drawn. Here are the Western Conference predictions for ESPN. They have the Grizzlies finishing number 1, the Grizzlies, who are going to be without their best player for the first 25 games of the season, and a team that still has massive identity and chemistry issues that they need to fix. They have the Timberwolves second. They're putting the Grizzlies and Timberwolves 1 and 2 over teams like the Nuggets, Suns, Clippers, and even the Lakers. Now, granted, teams like the Suns and Nuggets might take their foot off the gas a little in the regular season because they may not care as much to get the number 1 seed as long as they're fully healthy and locked in come playoff time. But to predict, of all teams, to have them ahead at the top, the Grizzlies and the Timberwolves, number 1, number 2 of all teams, is laughable. Yeah, Anthony Edwards might have a breakout season. Maybe Gobert finally gets things figured out in Minnesota after being there for a couple of seasons now. Maybe Karl Anthony Towns has a dominant season like we saw from him a couple years back. But so many of these things have to go right for this team, and even then, I don't know if I would have them finishing anywhere close to number 2 in the West, not when they finished 7th last year and barely squeaked into the playoffs. The Warriors, they have them at 4, which is way too high in my view. I said in my team's most likely to disappoint video that they would be one of them, and it's really because of their age. I think they're going to have players in and out of the lineup due to injury throughout the season, and I just don't like the overall fit by adding in Chris Paul and still not having a quality big or an answer for Nikola Jokic. The other things that jump out to me with this prediction in the Western Conference is that they didn't have the Thunder in the top 10. They have them missing the play-in. After they were consistently showing signs of improvement last year, went to the play-in, won 40 games, and they got better now they have Chet Holmgren fully healthy. There is no way, barring a major injury, that the Thunder fall out of the play-in. Just no way. Then, they also have the Pelicans finishing 6th ahead of the Kings, Lakers, Mavericks, and Clippers. The Pelicans are nice when Zion is fully healthy, but he's really given us nothing to think that he can actually stay healthy for a full season. And even with Zion healthy, not a chance they're better than the Lakers or the Clippers, hell, even the Kings. Why are the Kings going to take a step back when they played so well last season, kept their core intact, and are a young team that is only going to get better? The Clippers finishing 10th is wild because even with Kawhi and Paul George missing a lot last season, they still managed to finish 5th in the West. They think Kawhi or Paul George are going to be missing the whole season or something? And then the last thing I'll say about this that just does not compute whatsoever, and you would have thought they would have fact-checked this a bit to ensure that it actually works, because of these top 10 teams in each conference that they have projected, they have one team in the entire NBA winning more than 50 games. One team. I know the league has a ton of parity, the playing field overall is pretty level, but wins gotta come somewhere. Is every team in the league going to be winning between 38 and 49 games? Last season you had 6 teams win 50 or more games. You're not going to have that reduced to just one, not when there are still some very bad rebuilding teams in the league. To think that the Western Conference is going to be led by the Memphis Grizzlies with 48 wins is just something else. again, in my view, just leads to lazy, not thought out analysis by one of the biggest media outlets in sports. Now, I'll have my conference standing predictions for both the East and the West in the coming days. I like to wait for the preseason to conclude before I finalize it in case there are any major injuries or last-minute trades before the start of the season, but be on the lookout for that. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.